for something. I'm going to represent the 36th Senate District. I will do that with the heart, passion, and spirit we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next, we have representatives of Congress, John Molnar and Jeff Holmes. And again, they will have 1 minute each for an opening statement, our questions with a 2-minute response time, and then at the end, 2 minutes for closing. The yellow caution means you have 20 seconds left of your 2-minute time, and then we appreciate you stopping with everyone has. Thank you very much, gentlemen. When the stop signal is given. Opening statements.
Thank you, and good evening. My name is John Molinar, and I've had the pleasure of representing you in Lansing as your state senator. And I'll tell you, it's been an honor, and I appreciate how Gladys County has received me and welcomed me in that service. One of the things that I believe in public service is that it brings out the best in some people. One of the honors that I had was to honor Colonel Pash in the Michigan Senate and his family, and for his dedication to military service as well as what he's done for the community. To me, that's what America's all about, fighting for America. And that's why I'm running for Congress, because I believe in America, and I want to make sure that we continue to have the American dream. I'm concerned about the direction of our country. Washington isn't working for us. I've been working in state government where we've been getting our budget balanced, paying down debt, we've been putting money in the rainy day fund, and providing for future opportunities for job growth. Michigan isn't where we need to be yet. We've got a long ways to go, but I'm confident we will, and I want to do that for America.
Well, my name is Jeff Holmes, and I'm a family practice physician from Alma. Been there 26 years, 24 as the managing partner of a small practice, 5 practitioner group. Also been at the school board for 10 years, the last 6 as treasurer. When Dave Camp was retiring, I wanted to help, and that inspired me to run for this district. I think there's a lot of things that we need to do in the National Congress, the things that we need to change. There are also things that are working well that we need to continue. Some of the things that we're seeing right now, since 2008, the growth in the federal budget has been 1.4% annually. That's the lowest rate since Eisenhower. We've also had 54 months of private sector job growth nationally that has been increasing every month. Since Labor Department's been keeping that statistics, that is the greatest number of months ever. Those are positive things that we need to continue. There are many more I can tell you about as a physician. We'll get a chance, I'm sure, to answer some of those questions.
And our first question is, what is your position on the Second Amendment, and how do you feel about law-abiding citizens carrying concealed weapons?
As an owner of firearms, I really appreciate the sporting aspect of firearms. In our family, we've enjoyed shooting skeet together. We've not been hunting. My father served in Korea, and he came home from Korea, and he had some pretty significant PTSD. He was not able to really hunt with us anymore, and he really couldn't go camping with us anymore. I appreciate the culture of passing down that tradition from parent to child. I think that it's important to have that tradition. In our area, it's very important to have hunting because of the overgrowth of deer and the way they wreak havoc on our farms and on our neighborhoods as well. And of course, if anybody's hit a deer, they realize how much of a problem that is as well. So I think that it's important to support the ability to enjoy firearm sports. I think it's important to also recognize that we can improve the safety of firearms, and we need to be allowed to do that. Presently, the National Rifle Association has made it that there can be no federal funding on research in making firearms safer. Back in the 30s and 40s, we had such carnage on our highways that they considered outlawing motor vehicles. Instead, we created the National Highway Transportation and Safety Administration, and we did research and made cars so much safer. It is amazing, with all the miles that we travel, how safe it is to be in a vehicle these days. Part of that is the way that they changed highways, and part of it is the way they changed vehicles. You can do the same thing with firearms, and research has already been done up until about 10 years ago that showed how we could do this, but now it's not allowed. We need to go back to making firearms as safe as they can be so they can be enjoyed by all of us.
Well, I would agree that our outdoor heritage is very important in Michigan, and I am a strong supporter. The Second Amendment is a much bigger issue than that. It's about the right to bear arms. And I'll tell you, when there was one woman who got her head cut off, for example, and another woman was in the process of getting her head cut off, I am glad there was someone there who could take out that terrorist. The Second Amendment is about the right to bear arms, and it's a constitutional right. I am a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I recently passed legislation in the Senate that would allow active duty military personnel to renew their CPL online when they're overseas fighting for our country. So it's not really about automobile safety or even gun safety. It's a constitutional right that needs to be protected, and you want someone in Washington, D.C. who's going to stand up for that right.
Next question is, what will you do to ensure that veterans receive the benefits that they are entitled to?
As chairman of the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee in the Senate, we've been working in 3 areas. We've been working to make sure that our veterans have access to their health care. Michigan was actually ranked last 4 years ago when it came to veterans' access to their health care. We improved that dramatically by starting a new agency that's focused with a laser. Secondly, we've been working on improving the transition from military service into the civilian workforce and giving credit for veterans who have served their country and helping them make that transition. And then thirdly, we've instituted a new stipend for the Michigan National Guard to get a college education. It's a travesty the way our veterans have been treated by this administration, by the VA. We need to dramatically improve that. There needs to be additional government accountability and oversight, and that's an important role for Congress to hold the administration accountable.
My family has members that have been veterans going back to the Revolutionary War. My son, Nathaniel Holmes, is named for my great-great-great-grandfather, Nathaniel Holmes, who served in the Revolutionary War. My grandfather served in World War I, World War II, and Korea, and my father served in Korea. Veterans Affairs has been very important to my family. As a physician, I've been serving veterans in my practice and in my training for the last 30 years. So I'm familiar with some of the issues that have faced the Veterans Administration. Back in the 90s, the Veterans Administration really had a great program going, but then they started to have more and more responsibilities added. They centralized the criteria for providing services instead of keeping them at each local veterans hospital, and they started to defund. So it's important to have someone that goes to Congress that understands how to serve veterans, who has served veterans, and then also how the system worked in the past, because he served in the past, and how it works now. So what we need to do now is we need to go back to the system there where we decentralize all of the criteria for services. So each local area can provide the service as they know the needs are. So in our practice, because there's not really a close-by veterans hospital, we provide through the TRICARE insurance care for veterans and active duty that are not near veterans hospitals. And we need to continue to improve that program so that it isn't always on just the veterans hospitals. The other thing that we need to do is to set what the actual goals and criteria are so that we can provide the services that are needed. But we need to have veterans hospitals because veterans' needs are very unique, and the people that work there understand that very well and are able to provide it in a way to provide the services that they will actually use. Thank you.
next question is, what steps would you propose to secure America's energy needs while protecting our water, air, and land?
We need to develop a renewable energy economy that's sustainable into the future. In Gratiot County, where I live, we have the largest wind farms in Michigan. But we need to not just concentrate on wind. We need to work from natural gas all the way through all of the renewable sources as well. In Germany, they provide 30% of their energy just from solar. And they have a worse climate than we have in Michigan, which is kind of hard to believe. So if they can do it in Germany, we can certainly start to add that in Michigan. We also have wind available, so we need to continue to promote that. And then we need to access the natural gas that we can access safely and environmentally soundly. We that live in Gratiot County also face 3 of the worst Superfund sites in the United States. And we don't want to continue to provide any sort of avenue to create new Superfund sites. So we need to be careful about how we access energy and make sure that we don't create problems down the road that are going to cost more in cleanup than in the energy that we're actually able to assess. Thank you. Next.
We have the Great Lakes. It's a tremendous resource. Our natural resources are such an important part of our heritage and our blessing for our state. 20% of the world's fresh water is very nice. So that's important. What is also important is that we have all of the above energy strategy, which means renewable energy, which means also clean coal, it means natural gas, it means making sure that America is energy independent. I believe that safe, proven technologies should be used to make sure that we become energy independent in this country. When you think about our future, when you think about the geopolitical, the wars that are being fought right now, wouldn't it be great to have an America that is energy independent? And when you think about manufacturing, there are some people who think that America can't manufacture. Those jobs are all going to China or Mexico or somewhere else. I believe we can manufacture. We can make things, produce things, and once again be the innovator in the world. But we need low-cost energy. One of the things that we probably disagree a little bit on is, when countries like Germany have had tremendous subsidies for solar, many of those countries are actually getting away from those subsidies because they're so costly and inefficient. I went through the process where Hemlock Semiconductor, which is one of the largest manufacturers of solar components, polycrystalline silicon, that go into solar panels, they had to build a plant in another state because our energy costs were so high in Michigan. So that you have high-cost energy to produce renewable. We need to make sure we have low-cost energy so we can lead in manufacturing.
Our next question is, the American people are unhappy with the failure of Congress to put aside partisan politics so that essential legislation can be passed. What is your position on working across the aisle so key legislation does get passed?
Well, I've done that in the Michigan legislature. When I look at the bills I've passed recently, we modernized senior citizen legislation and it passed unanimously. When I've worked on budgets, the Department of Community Health budget, which is about a $17 billion budget, we work in a bipartisan way to improve access for women for OB services, to improve funding for Solon Rural Hospital, and we made priorities. We worked on it together and passed it in a bipartisan way. I'm someone who likes to believe the best in other people. I'm someone who likes to work as a team. I've played sports all my life, and I believe that America is best when we have public servants who work together. And I believe there are times when you stand on principle, and those are the times when you stick to your guns. And then there are times when you work together because no one person has the whole answer on public policy. Those are the times when you need to hear the ideas, get the perspectives of others, to make the best possible bill in public policy possible.
As a family doctor, when we go from patient to patient, people think that we tell them what they should do and that they just will do it. but we have to negotiate with every patient to set up a treatment plan that they can follow. So there's a lot of compromising and a lot of work done to try to make sure that we can have a positive outcome. We want to have the outcome be good, and the path to it requires compromise. Now, when you think about working across the aisle, I think about what has happened in Michigan recently. Right to work was passed during a time of lame duck session. There was a time when Medicaid expansion was going to be offered for us, and people were proud of the fact that they delayed Medicaid expansion. Money is sent from us in Michigan to Washington, D.C. to pay for Medicaid expansion. That money stays there unless we vote to bring it back. The amount of time that we voted not to allow Medicaid expansion to occur was money that didn't come back to our state. In our hospital, once Medicaid expansion was allowed, there was a 50% reduction in uncompensated care. That pays for staff, that pays for programs, and that pays for jobs. So stopping Medicaid expansion cost us jobs, cost us money, and it was something that was done on an ideological basis. I don't think that that's working across the aisle. I don't think that that's compromise. And I think there were a lot of people out there, including Governor Snyder, who wanted it to occur. So Republicans wanted it to occur, but there was a strong contingent. My opponent was very proud to say that he delayed Medicaid expansion. And when the final vote came on, he voted no for Medicaid expansion, which was no to jobs.
Our next question is, what are the top priorities regarding the people and state of Michigan that you will work for if elected to serve them as U.S. Congress?
Top priorities in this district are jobs, health care, tax reform. Tax reform will help all of the other things to occur. So I think that tax reform that has been proposed by Representative Camp, I was at a meeting this evening in Alma College where Gary Peters was speaking. I was honored to be able to introduce him. And he talked about Representative Camp's proposal. He said there's many things in there that both Republicans and Democrats were interested in, but he felt that there's still a lot of work to go forward. I think we need a tax system that's simpler, fairer. I think we need to flatten it out. I also think we need to look at reducing the deductions so that we have practically none. Almost every deduction has a lobbyist. A lot of people have identified lobbyists as a source of problems in Washington right now. Well, I think that's a way to improve that process. You don't have to limit free speech. You don't have to try to pass any sort of other legislation. You just make them unnecessary. And then we need to expand that into the business aspect as well. Right now, people are using tax inversion. Businesses are buying small corporations overseas, having just a few folks there, but then making that their headquarters so that they can avoid tax. There's certainly a way for us to reduce the deductions for businesses, but then dramatically lower the tax. There was a study that was published and cited in Newsweek where they said if you lower the tax to around 20% for business, but remove those deductions, you will find an increase of about 3 to 4 million jobs just from that alone. And that would add to the 54 straight months of private sector job expansion that we've already experienced recently.
Well, job growth is absolutely the number one issue for our country, for Michigan, for the congressional district. And I'm going to work on that tirelessly. Tax reform is a big part of it. Dave Camp did a tremendous job advocating for a tax reform proposal. And quite frankly, when you put a proposal out there, it gives people a chance to critique it one way or another. But it took a tremendous amount of courage. A few of the things that I liked about it is that he eliminated many of the deductions, the picking winners and losers. He also gave businesses an incentive to invest in America rather than keeping their money offshore, to invest in American jobs. I think that's important. Another big problem is the growth of government. We have a $17.5 trillion debt. And when you consider that China holds a lot of that debt, and when you consider that that's future generations who are responsible for that debt, it's not only something that saps their future, it also becomes a national security issue, considering that China isn't always the most reliable ally. So when I think of it, I think we've got to cut back on some of the excess government spending. We need to hold government accountable and have government do what it should do and do it well. Like it should care for veterans. The IRS should not be targeting American citizens based on their political views. Across the board, the EPA ought to be getting Asian carp away from the Great Lakes rather than putting new regulations on farmers and the water sitting on farmers' property. So we need to right-size government, put it within limits, and then live within our means. So I believe that that's an important part of our economic future. I want to see the American dream restored, and that's what I'm going to work
And our last question, do you support the Disclosure Act, which would require disclosure by outside groups of large campaign contributions and expenditure? Why or why not?
Well, I think actually the courts have ruled on that. And so that's something that, obviously the courts have said that there's freedom of speech and that people are allowed to express their viewpoints. I'll tell you how I approach my campaign, though, is that I believe in absolute disclosure. If you look online, you can see my reports, who contributes to my campaign. And I think transparency is an important part of it. So I absolutely believe that we need to follow the law, follow the rules, and of course the Supreme Court in that respect has ruled on that issue.
The Disclosure Act is an important idea because it allows you to know who is funding the different points of view that are going out there. One of the difficulties about Citizens United is that it changed how speech was provided. It gave certain people a megaphone. On CMU's campus, there are all sorts of opportunities for people to provide free speech. However, they're not able to use a megaphone. They aren't able to be at certain places. There's all sorts of limits on the speech so that it doesn't favor one group over another. So the Disclosure Act is an attempt to try to allow that those kind of megaphone effects get used. I think that the transparency in campaigns is wonderful. We need to continue with that. I think we run campaigns here. I'm sure Joe Lukashevich would say the same thing. There's almost nothing to see when you look at our disclosures. So we certainly welcome the transparency for that. But I believe that the Disclosure Act is an attempt to try to provide the transparency so that the people with the megaphone, you understand who they are and what they're, instead of just being over shouting every other point.
And now you'll both have 2 minutes for your closing statements.
Well, I need your vote. November 4th comes up, and I need to have your vote, and I think I can earn it. The reason I think I can earn it is because of the experience that I can bring. All of you have been small business owners. I think I see a lot of folks here that have done that. And some of you have even been physicians. So you know, and we know how many problems you solve every day. And you know how often you have to face that kind of issue. And so I think that that's one of the issues and one of the benefits that I can bring. I think the other thing that's important to recognize is someone who is able to analyze, read, and understand things to bring things forward in the right direction. For instance, how many of you read about the EPA's clean water registration and governance? There's been a lot of comments about regulating the puddles on agricultural land. I've read the whole process. I've read the whole act as they brought it forth. It was something that the judicial system asked EPA to do because they wanted to have clarity. The EPA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers did it to provide clarity. And so this is a small example. As you read through it, they weren't trying to regulate certain things. In fact, they even stated they are not going to regulate puddles on agricultural land, and they're not going to regulate puddles that form from construction work. What they're looking at is to try to prevent what happened in Lake Erie, when 400,000 people could not drink their water because there is so much that's spilling into the Great Lakes. We talked about how the Great Lakes are 20% of our clean water. Well, we've got to protect it then. The idea that we want to shut down the EPA, whose sole purpose is just to provide clarity and just try to protect our environment. So if you want someone who can help you with that process, who can lead you in a way that provides clarity, transparency, and understands the issues that we face, and has been solving problems for 30 years as a physician and a business owner, then I think you'll want to vote for me. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for coming tonight, for listening to all the candidates. I just appreciate the chance to share my views and have that answer questions. I very much have enjoyed working for you as your secretary these last 4 years. And I had the opportunity to run again for the state senate, and I chose not to. The state can't decide to do what they want for Congress. And the reason I did is because I want to do something for our country. I believe in public service, I believe in serving our country. And we talked a little bit earlier about that. 3 of our children, son, our daughter, son-in-law, are all serving in the Army. So I believe in their public service. I believe in serving this country, and I believe a strong America is a safer world. I want to work to restore the American dream. I'm very concerned about the direction we are headed as a country. I think Obamacare is going to be very costly for our country's future. I think the IRS is way out of control. I think the EPA, if you want to know what the EPA's new regulations do, who do you trust on that? I'd ask Farm Bureau. They're the ones who talk to farmers. They're the ones who ask them what their view of this is. So I'm someone who listens. I'm someone who works together with people to get things done. And I believe I've got a proven record of getting things done for Gladwin County. And I hope you will allow me the privilege to represent you in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next, it is not on your agenda, but we did have one running for the office of Lieutenant Governor. Mary? I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming. And we have no questions, but we'll just give you 3 minutes to come up here and take your.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak for just a couple of minutes. My name is Mary Biznuma, and I'm the Libertarian candidate for governor. I don't know about you, but I love Turner Classroom. And there's my particular favorite was called Double Indemnity. It was with Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck. And 2 of the great lines from that movie was, Barbara Stanwyck says, the story is that insurance agent gets involved with a woman to knock off her husband and they get the money. So anyway, Barbara Stanwyck's talking to Fred McMurray, and she says, "We're both rotten." And then Fred McMurray answers her and says, "Yeah, but you're more rotten." And that's basically your governor's race this November, everyone. It's rotten or more rotten, just depending on, who's who. Could be either one. I'm running to give you a choice. A lot of people, and a voice, because a lot of people in Michigan are tired of the status quo. They're tired of special interest funding. They're tired of money from the many going to a chosen few, which has grown a government. Huge. Our state government right now is too intrusive, too expensive, and way too big. Cut it. And you can do this. As governor, I would work to eliminate special interest funding. And as part of the governor's office, he has over 200 boards and commissions. Everyone from the Tarrant Commission right on down to the War of 1812 Commission, which I think will probably end this year because I believe the War of 1812 ended December 24th, 1814 with the Treaty of Kent. But there's still a couple of guys on that are going to be around until 2017. Maybe they're planning the next 200 or 400 year celebration. Who knows? But anyway, our state governor keeps growing them. Right now, Oh, and a lot of these boards and commissions, they're run by political appointees. Many of them turned out legislators. And so they are nests for special interests. Go along to get along, and you become the next liquor commissioner at $78,000 a year. Some of them aren't even needed. Right now, you've heard mention of the local community stabilization authority that allots the personal property tax to municipalities. That came out of Proposal 1. All right? Another commission or authority, the Treasury couldn't do this. An automobile theft prevention authority to include insurance fraud paid with higher insurance taxes. Well, that's why my insurance tax went up this year. Why can't the Michigan State Police do this and find room in their $525 million budget? We can make government smaller. Everybody talks about the roads and road funding. Well, the House found $500 million. Some of it was just money that wasn't being used. A lot of money laying under the couch cushion. You can eliminate more. One is our Michigan Economic Development Corporation. $300 million. Add that $500 million. You got $800 million. Okay, what else? What else can you do? Well, how about that reverse Robin Hood known as the film subsidy? There's another $50 million. So there are things you can do. Some people talking about fees for the trucks. Well, yeah, okay. But what I'm saying is, make government smaller. Return that money to the taxpayer, people who earn it. Because when you put money into an economy, you do grow an economy. Yeah. Consumers grow an economy, not governments. So, like I said, stop taking it out of the economy and put it back. People need a tax cut, all right? They really do. And since our economy is sort of on a bump, maybe this is a good opportunity to look. Don't waste this opportunity. Don't let that window shut again. I would appreciate your vote. Like I said, I am the protest vote. Governor Snyder, people say it's Governor Snyder's race to lose right now. Okay, fine. So, here you go. I'm your protest vote. A wasted vote is voting against someone or something. Vote for something. Vote for smaller government, more freedom, less taxes. Vote Libertarian for a change. Thank you.
And I believe that ends our evening. I appreciate everyone.